Make a wish, Evan! The restaurant erupted into cheers as my brother closed his eyes, making that exaggerated thinking face he's had since we were kids. At 34, he still approached birthday wishes with the same earnestness he had at 8. I watched from across the table, nursing my third glass of wine. Mom had gone all out for his birthday, reserved the private room at Rosario's, invited 30 of his closest friends and family, ordered a cake so elaborate it probably cost more than my monthly rent. Classic Carol Winters, always making sure her firstborn got the celebration he deserved. "What did you wish for?" Mom asked after he blew out all the candles in one breath. "Mom, he can't tell us," I said, rolling my eyes. "Then it won't come true." Evan laughed. Exactly what Noah said. Gotta keep some secrets. Everyone clapped as the waitstaff began cutting the cake, a 3-tiered masterpiece with "Happy Birthday, Evan" written in perfect gold script. I watched as my brother beamed, accepting congratulations and birthday wishes from the collection of friends and family gathered around him. "Noah," my father's voice pulled me from my thoughts. He'd slid into the empty chair beside me, his tie loosened after 3 scotches. "Why so quiet tonight? Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Just tired, Dad. Work's been crazy." The lie came easily. Work wasn't crazy. It was painfully, mind-numbingly predictable. Same as it had been for the past 7 years. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. "Well, your brother's certainly having a good time. Good turnout, don't you think?" "Yeah, Mom really outdid herself." "She always does for you boys," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "Just wait until your birthday next month. I'm sure she's already planning something." The thought made my stomach twist. My 32nd birthday was exactly 26 days away, and the last thing I wanted was a party like this, full of people asking questions about my job, my apartment, my non-existent love life. Questions I'd been answering the same way for years. Across the room, Evan was now opening gifts, exclaiming over each one with genuine appreciation. My brother, the successful architect, the loving husband, the father of 2 perfect children, and the owner of a house in the suburbs with a backyard big enough for a dog and a vegetable garden. I'd given him a vintage drafting tool set I'd found online. He'd already opened it, already thanked me with one of his bear hugs. "This is perfect, Noah. How did you know I wanted this?" I hadn't known. I'd guessed, like I did every year, hoping to hit on something that would make him look at me the way he was looking at me now. Like I understood him. Like I was paying attention. The waiter placed a slice of cake in front of me. Red velvet, Evan's favorite. I took a bite, but couldn't taste it. "Having fun?" The question came from my sister-in-law, Mia, who slid into the chair my father had vacated moments before. "Of course," I lied again. "Great party. Evan's thrilled you could make it. I know things have been busy for you." I nodded, grateful for the excuse she'd provided. "Work's been insane lately." Another lie. I'd left the office at 5 every day this week, gone home to my empty apartment, watched TV until I fell asleep on the couch. Mia smiled, glancing over at her husband, who was now showing off one of his gifts to a group of friends. "He misses you, you know. Says you don't come around enough anymore." Guilt twisted inside me. It had been nearly 3 months since I'd visited their house for Sunday dinner, despite the standing invitation. "I know. I'll try to be better about that." "Good," she said, patting my hand. "The kids ask about Uncle Noah all the time." More guilt. Emma was 7 now, Jack had just turned 4, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd spent quality time with either of them. "Maybe next weekend," I offered. "I could come over, we could do something fun." "That would be perfect," Mia said, her face lighting up. "Emma's got a soccer game Saturday morning. She'd love it if you came." "I'll be there," I promised. making a mental note to actually put it on my calendar this time. Mia rejoined Evan, wrapping her arm around his waist as he continued showing off his gifts. They fit together so perfectly, like two puzzle pieces designed to connect. I watched them, feeling that familiar ache in my chest. Not jealousy exactly, but something adjacent to it. Longing, maybe. The party continued around me. I finished my cake, accepted another glass of wine from a passing waiter, and settled into my role as the quiet observer. It wasn't an unfamiliar position. Growing up, Evan had always been the center of attention, loud, funny, charismatic. I was the introspective one, the reader, the dreamer. My parents never compared us. Not explicitly, but it was hard not to draw my own comparisons when everything seemed to come so easily to him. "Uncle Noah?" Emma's voice cut through my thoughts as she bounded over, her dark hair bouncing in a ponytail. "Did you bring us presents from Japan?" Jack asked eagerly, bouncing on his toes. "Jack," Mia admonished, appearing behind them. "That's not polite." I laughed. "It's okay. And yes, I did bring presents, lots of them." Evan stepped forward then, pulling me into a bear hug. "Welcome back, world traveler," he said, his voice warm with genuine feeling. "You look different." "Good different or bad different?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. I'd lost weight during my travels, gained a tan from the Thai beaches, grown my hair longer than I'd worn it since college. "Good different," he assured me. "Like you actually enjoyed your vacation." "It wasn't a vacation," I corrected automatically. "It was a journey of self-discovery?" he suggested, his tone gently teasing. "Something like that," I admitted with a smile. We collected my luggage, one suitcase significantly heavier than when I'd left, thanks to souvenirs and gifts, and headed to Evan's SUV in the parking garage. The kids peppered me with questions about my travels. Had I seen real Pokémon in Japan? Were the elephants in Thailand as big as in movies? Did I eat bugs? I answered each one patiently, enjoying their curiosity, while catching Mia's eye in the rearview mirror. She smiled, mouthing, "They missed you," when the kids weren't looking. "Mom and Dad wanted to be here too," Evan said as we merged onto the highway. "But I convinced them to wait until dinner. Figured you'd be jet-lagged enough without a full welcoming committee at the airport." "Thanks for that," I said gratefully. "Though I've gotten pretty good at functioning through jet lag these past couple months." "Well, you're having dinner at their house tonight, just so you know. Mom's been cooking all day." I groaned. "Please tell me she's not making a giant welcome home banner or something." Evan and Mia exchanged a look. "No way," I said. "She did not." "She did," Mia confirmed. "And there might be balloons." I leaned back in my seat, caught between exasperation and affection. "She does realize I'm 32, not 12, right?" "To her, you will always be her baby," Evan said with a shrug. "Even more so now that you're moving to Korea, which, by the way, she's mostly come to terms with. Dad, too, though he still has some practical concerns he wants to discuss." "So you told them everything," I said, not surprised. "Not everything. Just the broad strokes. Figured you'd want to share the details yourself." We dropped Mia and the kids at their house, with promises to see them again soon. Then Evan drove me to our parents' home in the suburbs. As predicted, a large banner hung across the front porch, and balloons tied to the mailbox announced my return to the entire neighborhood. "Prepare yourself," Evan muttered as we walked up the driveway. "She's been planning this for weeks." Our mother flung open the door before we could even knock, enveloping me in a hug that threatened to crack my ribs. "My baby," she whispered, holding me tight. "Welcome home." Over her shoulder, I saw my father standing in the hallway, trying to maintain his usual stoic demeanor, but clearly emotional at my return. When my mother finally released me, he stepped forward for his own hug, briefer than hers, but no less heartfelt. "Good to have you back, son," he said, his voice gruff with feeling. "Good to be back," I replied, surprised to find I actually meant it. Dinner was a feast, all my childhood favorites prepared with meticulous care. As we ate, I shared stories from my travels, showing photos on my tablet, describing the people I'd met and places I'd seen. My parents listened intently, asking questions, expressing appropriate awe or concern at the right moments. It wasn't until dessert, apple pie, my father's favorite, that the conversation turned to my future plans. "So," my mother began, setting a slice in front of me. "Evan mentioned you've been thinking about teaching English in Korea?" I shot my brother a look. He'd said he'd only shared the broad strokes, but apparently those strokes had been pretty detailed. "Yes," I confirmed, deciding to embrace the topic head-on. "I've been researching programs and requirements. I'd need to get a certification first, which takes a few months, and then I could apply for positions starting next spring." "And you're sure about this?" my father asked carefully. "It's quite a career change." "I'm sure I want to try it," I said. "I can't promise it'll be my forever path, but it feels right for now." "But what about your apartment, your job?" my mother pressed. "Evan said you've already given notice on both." I nodded. "My lease is up at the end of the month, and Janet, my boss, understood that I needed a change. She even offered to write me a recommendation for whatever I do next." "That was nice of her," my father remarked. "But where will you live until you go to Korea? Assuming you get a position, of course." This was the moment I'd been nervous about. Actually, I was hoping I might stay here for a few months, just until I get everything sorted out. I'd contribute to expenses, of course, and help around the house. I expected resistance, or at least hesitation. Instead, my mother's face lit up. "Oh, Noah, we'd love that. Wouldn't we, Robert?" She turned to my father, who was nodding. "Your room is exactly as you left it," he said. "Well, your mother may have refreshed the bedding and dusted a bit when we heard you were coming home." "A bit?" Evan scoffed. "She's been spring cleaning that room for a week." My mother swatted his arm playfully. "Hush, you. Of course we want you here, Noah. As long as you need." Relief washed over me. "Thank you, that helps a lot. I was worried you might think I was—" "Running away?" my father suggested when I trailed off. I nodded, surprised by his perceptiveness. "We did wonder that at first," he admitted, "when Evan first told us about your plans, but then your mother reminded me of something." "What's that?" I asked. "That I did the same thing at your age," he said, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Not teaching abroad, but making a complete career change. I was in finance before I met your mother. Did you know that?" I shook my head, genuinely surprised. "I always thought you'd been in engineering your whole career." 3 years in finance first. Hated every minute of it. Then I went back to school, got my engineering degree, and never looked back." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand, a rare gesture of physical affection from him. Sometimes you have to try something completely different to find what fits. I get that. "We both do," my mother added. "We just want you to be happy, Noah, and you haven't been, not for a long time. We could see that, even if you couldn't." The understanding in their eyes brought a lump to my throat. "Thank you," I managed to say. "That means everything." The conversation moved on to more practical matters then. When I'd move in, what I needed to bring, how we'd handle shared expenses. By the time Evan left to head home to his family, the outlines of my next few months had taken shape, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't expected to find. My mother insisted I stay the night rather than going to my almost empty apartment. "Your bed is made up," she said, "and you must be exhausted from the flight." I was, the adrenaline of homecoming finally giving way to bone-deep weariness. I accepted gratefully, retrieving only an overnight bag from my luggage. As I settled into my childhood bedroom, indeed exactly as I'd left it, down to the college pennant on the wall and the stack of fantasy novels on the nightstand, I took out the last of my travel journals and made a final entry. September 11th, home. I'm back in Chicago, in my old bedroom at my parents' house. It should feel strange, returning to this childhood space as a very different adult, but somehow it doesn't. There's comfort in the familiar, even as I plan my next adventure. I worried that coming back would undo all the changes these past months have brought, that I'd slip back into old patterns, old insecurities, old dissatisfactions, but I don't think that's going to happen. The changes aren't just in my surroundings, they're in me. Tomorrow I'll go back to my apartment, start sorting through what to keep and what to let go. Begin the TEFL certification process. Research teaching programs more thoroughly. But tonight, I'm simply grateful for the journey I've taken, for the family who welcomes me home with open arms, even as I prepare to leave again, and for the birthday wish that started it all. 2 months ago, as Evan blew out his birthday candles, I made a wish of my own. I wished for something different, something more. I booked a one-way ticket and jumped into the unknown. I couldn't have imagined then where that leap would lead me. To Tokyo and Seoul and Bangkok, yes, but more importantly, to a version of myself I'd forgotten existed. Someone curious, brave, open to possibility. I don't know what the next chapter holds. Teaching in Korea might be wonderful, or it might be just another step on a longer journey. But for the first time in years, I'm excited to find out. And that, I think, is the greatest gift my travels have given me. Not just new experiences and memories, but the anticipation of what comes next. Whatever it is, I'm ready. I closed the journal, placed it on the nightstand beside the fantasy novels I'd devoured as a teenager, dreaming of far-off adventures, and turned out the light. As sleep claimed me, I thought about the contrast between this homecoming and Evan's birthday party 2 months ago, how I'd sat there feeling trapped, envious, disconnected from my own life. Now, despite the uncertainty ahead, despite not knowing exactly where I'd be or what I'd be doing in 6 months' time, I felt more grounded than I had in years. More myself. The journey that had begun with a whispered wish and a one-way ticket hadn't ended with my return to Chicago. In many ways, it was just beginning. And this time I wasn't running away from anything. I was running toward everything. "Uncle Noah! Look what I made in art class!" Emma's face filled my laptop screen, her hands holding up a colorful paper craft. Despite the early hour in Chicago, it was evening in Busan. Her energy was undimmed. "Is that a crane?" I asked, recognizing the origami shape I'd taught her when I was home last Christmas. "Yes! I showed everyone how to make them, and my teacher said mine was the best." "That's awesome, Em," I said, genuinely impressed. "Your folds are really neat." She beamed with pride. "I've been practicing. Dad says if I keep getting better, maybe I can visit you, and you can take me to Japan to meet that nice lady who taught you." "Tanaka-san would love that," I told her. "She asks about you guys whenever I visit Tokyo." "When are you coming home?" Emma asked, suddenly serious. "Dad says maybe for your birthday." "That's the plan," I confirmed. "I'll be home for 3 weeks in July." "Good," she said firmly. "Because we have to celebrate your birthday properly this time. Last year you were on an airplane, and the year before that was boring." I laughed. "Well, I'll leave the party planning to you then. Just nothing too crazy, okay?" "No promises," she said with a mischievous grin. We chatted a while longer before Mia called her for breakfast. Evan took her place on screen, coffee mug in hand. "How's life in Korea?" he asked, settling into what had become our weekly video call routine. "Good," I said. "Really good, actually. My students just finished their business presentation unit, and they knocked it out of the park. Even Mr. Park was impressed, and he's not easy to impress. Mr. Park was the director of the Language Institute, where I'd been teaching for the past 9 months, a prestigious program affiliated with one of Busan's major universities. When I'd applied for the position, fresh off my TEFL certification, and with no formal teaching experience, I'd been sure it was a long shot. To my surprise, they'd hired me almost immediately, citing my business background as a perfect fit for their professional English program. "Sounds like you're really finding your groove there," Evan remarked. "Think you'll stay another year?" I nodded. "I've already signed the contract renewal. It just feels right, you know? The work is challenging but rewarding. The location is amazing. I can see the ocean from my apartment, and I've made some good friends here. Including that hiking guide you mentioned? What was her name again? Ji-Hae?" I felt myself flush slightly. "Yes, including Ji-Hae. She's actually been helping me improve my Korean." "Uh-huh," Evan said, his knowing smile suggesting he thought there might be more to it than language exchange. "And how's that going?" "Slowly," I admitted. "Korean is a lot harder than Japanese for me for some reason, but I can handle basic conversations now, order in restaurants, that kind of thing." "And what about the other thing we talked about? The freelance work?" This was a newer development. I'd recently started doing some content writing for international businesses looking to improve their English marketing materials. It had begun as a small side project, but was growing steadily. "It's going well," I said. "I just picked up 2 new clients last week. If it keeps expanding at this rate, I might be able to transition to doing that full-time eventually, which would mean I could work from anywhere." "Anywhere specific in mind?" Evan asked. I shrugged. "I'm keeping my options open. I like Korea, but I also miss Japan sometimes, and there are so many other places I still want to explore." "As long as you keep coming home to visit," he said. "The kids would revolt if their world-traveling uncle disappeared completely." "Never," I promised. "And you guys should come visit me here. The kids would love it, and there's plenty of touristy stuff, but also beautiful mountains and beaches." "We're thinking about it," Evan said. "Maybe next spring when Mia's work slows down a bit. And speaking of family visits, Mom wanted me to remind you that they're still planning to come see you in September." Our parents had surprised us all by embracing my new expatriate lifestyle with unexpected enthusiasm. They called regularly, asked detailed questions about my students and my explorations, and had even started taking Korean language classes at the community center. "I know," I said with a smile. "Dad emails me weekly with updates on their itinerary planning. I think he's more excited about visiting the DMZ than I was when I actually went there." "He's got a spreadsheet," Evan confirmed. "Mom showed me last Sunday." We both laughed, knowing our father's penchant for meticulous planning. "So you're really happy there?" Evan asked, his tone turning more serious. "No regrets about making such a big change?" I considered the question, thinking back to where I'd been a year ago, sitting in that restaurant watching my brother blow out his birthday candles, feeling trapped in a life that no longer fit. So much had changed since then, both around me and within me. "No regrets," I said firmly. "I miss you guys, of course, and sometimes I miss the familiarity of home, but this feels right for me, at least for now. I'm doing work that matters to me, living in a place that constantly surprises and challenges me, meeting people I never would have crossed paths with otherwise." "And you're happy," Evan observed. It wasn't a question this time. "I am," I agreed, realizing the truth of it with a sense of quiet wonder. "Genuinely happy, maybe for the first time in my adult life." "Then it was worth it," he said simply. "All of it. The scary leap, the uncertainty, the distance. Worth it to see you like this." After we said our goodbyes, promising to talk again next week, I closed my laptop and walked to the balcony of my small but comfortable apartment. The sun was setting over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the distance, ships moved slowly toward the horizon, carrying goods and people to destinations unknown. A year ago, I'd made a wish and booked a one-way ticket, not knowing where that impulse would ultimately lead me. The journey had been unpredictable, occasionally difficult, but ultimately transformative in ways I could never have anticipated. Tonight, as I watched the sun sink into the sea, I made another wish, not for change this time, but for the wisdom to recognize and appreciate the life I was building, one choice at a time. To remember that sometimes the most important journeys aren't measured in miles traveled, but in the distance between who you were and who you've become. Tomorrow, I would wake early and meet Ji-hye for coffee before my first class. We would practice Korean phrases and laugh at my pronunciation. I would teach business professionals how to conduct meetings in English, encourage them when they struggled, celebrate their successes. Later, I would work on my freelance projects, perhaps call my parents, maybe explore a new neighborhood or restaurant. Ordinary moments in an extraordinary life, one that I had chosen, step by step, starting with that quiet wish on the night of my brother's birthday. They had sung happy birthday to him first. I had quietly made a wish and booked one-way tickets, and somehow, against all odds, that wish had come true. "See Dad's cake? It's so cool." "I did," I said, smiling genuinely for the first time that evening. "It's almost as cool as your dad." "Way cooler," she said, giggling. "Dad's pretty boring." I laughed. "Don't let him hear you say that." "It's okay, he knows." She leaned against my chair, looking up at me with Mia's dark eyes. "When's your birthday again?" "Next month," I told her. "July 15th. Are you going to have a big party like this?" I shook my head. "Probably not. I'm not really a big party kind of guy." She considered this, her forehead creasing in thought. "If you had a party, what kind would you want?" The question caught me off guard. What kind of party would I want? I couldn't remember the last time I'd actually wanted to celebrate my birthday. The past few years had been quiet dinners with my parents and Evan's family, gifts I didn't need, and cake I barely tasted. "I don't know," I admitted. "Something quiet, I guess." Emma frowned, clearly disappointed by my boring answer. "If it was my birthday," she said, "I'd want to have it somewhere amazing, like Disney World or Paris." "Paris, huh?" I smiled at her enthusiasm. "That's a pretty great birthday destination." "Have you ever been there?" "No," I said, realizing as I spoke that it was just one of many places I'd never been, despite years of saying I wanted to travel more. "But I've heard it's beautiful." "Mom says we'll go someday," Emma said, with all the confidence of a child who believes in some days. "When Jack and I are older." "I'm sure you will." "Emma!" Mia called from across the room. "Come say goodbye to the Robinsons." Emma sighed dramatically. "I gotta go. Bye, Uncle Noah." She gave me a quick hug before running off to join her mother. I watched her go, thinking about her question. If I could have any kind of birthday celebration, what would I want? Not this, certainly. Not a room full of people watching me blow out candles and open gifts. Not another year marked by nothing changing, nothing moving forward. The thought lodged in my brain as I sat through the rest of the party, as people began to leave, as Evan thanked everyone for coming. It was still there as I helped my parents and Mia clean up, stacking plates and gathering discarded gift wrap. It lingered as I hugged my brother goodbye. "Thanks for coming, Noah," Evan said, holding on a beat longer than usual. "It meant a lot to have you here." "Wouldn't have missed it," I said, meaning it despite my discomfort throughout the evening. "Happy birthday, big brother." As I walked to my car in the dimly lit parking lot, Emma's words echoed in my head. Somewhere amazing, like Disney World or Paris. The idea took root, growing with each step I took toward my sensible sedan. I paused before getting in, looking up at the clear night sky. The stars were barely visible through the city lights, but I picked the brightest one I could find. I began, feeling foolish but continuing anyway. I wish I could be somewhere else for my birthday. Somewhere new, somewhere amazing. I got in my car, started the engine, and sat there for a moment. The digital clock on the dashboard read 10:42 p.m. 26 days until my 32nd birthday. 26 days to decide if I was going to keep existing in the same holding pattern I'd been in for years, or if I was finally going to do something different. I drove home, the idea still growing, taking shape, becoming something that felt dangerously like a plan. My apartment greeted me with its familiar silence. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a combined living room and kitchen that I'd furnished with IKEA basics 7 years ago when I'd first moved in. I'd meant it to be temporary, a starter apartment until I found something better, something that felt more like home. 7 years later, the only personal touches were a bookshelf crammed with novels I'd read once and never picked up again, and a few framed photos of my family that my mother had insisted I display. I dropped my keys on the counter and went straight to my laptop, opening it before I could talk myself out of what I was about to do. The browser's homepage loaded, and I typed, "One-way tickets to," before pausing. Where would I go if I could go anywhere? Emma had said Paris, but that seemed too obvious, too touristy. I wanted somewhere I could disappear for a while, somewhere I could reset, somewhere far enough away that I couldn't easily come back when I inevitably lost my nerve. Japan. The thought came suddenly, clearly. I'd always been fascinated by Japanese culture, had taken 2 years of the language in college before switching to a more practical business major at my father's suggestion. I still had a basic grasp of it, enough to get by as a tourist. I typed "one-way tickets to Tokyo" and hit enter. The search results loaded, showing flights leaving from Chicago O'Hare, prices ranging from expensive to outrageous. I clicked on one departing July 14th, the day before my birthday. 14 hours and 40 minutes of flight time, arriving in Tokyo on July 15th due to the time difference. I'd turned 32 somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. My finger hovered over the Book Now button. This was crazy. I couldn't just leave. I had responsibilities, a job, an apartment, family obligations. What would I tell everyone? What would I do when I got there? But even as these practical concerns flooded my mind, another part of me was already planning. I had a decent amount saved up. I'd been putting money aside for years for some undefined future purpose. I was between projects at work and had nearly 3 weeks of unused vacation time. My lease was month to month as of last year. There was, I realized, with a mixture of liberation and sadness, very little tying me to my current life. I closed the laptop without booking the flight. This wasn't a decision to make at midnight after 3 glasses of wine and an evening of existential dread. I needed to think about this rationally, to weigh the pros and cons, to consider the logistics, but as I got ready for bed, the idea wouldn't leave me. I fell asleep thinking about Tokyo streets, about waking up on my birthday in a place where no one knew me, where I could be anyone I wanted to be. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I would go. Not just to Tokyo, but to several places I'd always wanted to see. I'd take a month, maybe 2, and travel. I'd use my savings, take my vacation time, and figure out the rest as I went. Over the next week, the plan crystallized. I requested a meeting with my boss, a practical woman named Janet, who'd always seemed to value efficiency over emotion. "A sabbatical," she repeated after I'd made my case. "That's unusual for someone at your level, Noah." "I know," I said, maintaining eye contact despite my nervousness. But I've been here for 7 years, and I think this break would help me come back refreshed and more productive. She studied me across her desk. You're between projects right now, which works in your favor, and your performance has always been satisfactory. The faint praise stung, but I kept my expression neutral. How long are you thinking? 2 months, I said, having decided on this time frame the night before. I have 3 weeks of vacation saved up that I'd use first, and then I'd take 5 more weeks unpaid. She tapped her pen against her desk, thinking. If we do this, I can't guarantee your exact position will be waiting for you, but we could likely find something comparable when you return. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than I'd expected. That would work for me. I'll need to discuss it with HR, she said. Let me get back to you by the end of the week. I thanked her and left her office, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. It was really happening. I was really doing this. The next hurdle was telling my family. I decided to start with Evan, who I hoped would be the most understanding. I called and invited him to lunch, choosing a day I knew he'd be working downtown near my office. We met at a small sandwich shop halfway between our buildings. Evan arrived first, already seated with 2 waters on the table when I walked in. Hey, little brother, he said, standing to give me a hug. Twice in 1 week. I'm starting to think you actually like me. I laughed, sliding into the booth across from him. Don't get used to it. I just needed a lunch break escape from the office. We ordered, turkey club for him, Reuben for me, the same things we'd been ordering since college, and made small talk about work and his kids, until our food arrived. So, he said, taking a bite of his sandwich. What's up? You sounded weird on the phone. I set down my sandwich, suddenly not hungry. I'm planning a trip. Yeah? Where to? Several places, I said, starting with Japan. His eyebrows shot up. Japan? That's not exactly a weekend getaway. How long are you going for? 2 months if my boss approves the sabbatical. Evan set down his sandwich, giving me his full attention. 2 months? Noah, what's going on? I shrugged, trying to appear more casual than I felt. Nothing's going on. I just need a break. I've been at the same job, in the same apartment, doing the same things for 7 years. I need something different. He studied me, concern evident in his eyes. Is this about your birthday? The question caught me off guard. What? No. Because I know you always get a little weird around your birthday, like you're measuring yourself against some timeline you've created. I felt a flash of irritation. This isn't about my birthday, and I don't get weird. You do, though, he insisted. Every year you get all introspective and moody. Remember last year when you talked about quitting your job to become a bartender? I did remember, vaguely. It had been after too many drinks at the quiet dinner my parents had hosted for my 31st. This is different. I'm not making some impulsive career change. I'm just taking some time to travel. Buying a one-way ticket to Japan sounds pretty impulsive to me. I never said it was one way, I protested, though of course that had been exactly my plan. Evan sighed. Look, I get needing a break, but 2 months in another country? That's a big deal, Noah. Have you thought this through? Yes, I said firmly. I've been thinking about it for a while. A week, but he didn't need to know that. I have the savings, I'll have the time off, it makes sense. What about your apartment? It's month to month, I'll pay in advance before I go. And Mom and Dad? Have you told them yet? I shook my head. I wanted to tell you first. He leaned back in the booth, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from childhood as his thinking pose. They're not going to like it, especially Mom. You know how she is about having everyone together for birthdays. I know, I said, feeling a twinge of guilt. But I need to do this, Evan. I can't explain it exactly, but it feels important." He was quiet for a moment, considering. Then, to my surprise, he nodded. "Okay. Okay? If it's that important to you, then okay. I don't completely understand it, but I support you." He reached across the table and squeezed my arm. "Just promise me you'll be careful, and that you'll stay in touch." Relief washed over me. "I will. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he said with a wry smile. "You still have to tell Mom and Dad?" I groaned. "I know, I'm thinking Sunday dinner might be the best time. Will you and Mia be there?" "We can be," he said. "Moral support and all that." We finished our lunch, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. As we parted ways outside the restaurant, Evan pulled me into another hug. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I think maybe this is a good idea. You haven't seemed happy in a long time, Noah." His words stayed with me for the rest of the day, echoing in my mind as I went through the motions at work. You haven't seemed happy in a long time. Had it been that obvious? Had everyone seen it but me? By Friday, Janet had approved my sabbatical request. 8 weeks, she confirmed. 3 paid with your vacation time, 5 unpaid. Your position won't be guaranteed, but we'll do our best to find something suitable when you return. I thanked her, ignoring the flutter of panic at the uncertainty. This was what I wanted, what I needed. That night, I finally did it. I booked a one-way ticket to Tokyo departing July 14th. The confirmation email arrived moments later, making it official. I was going. The Sunday dinner with my parents loomed. I arrived at their house in the suburbs armed with a bottle of my father's favorite whiskey and as much courage as I could muster. The house was exactly as it had always been, meticulously maintained by my mother, who believed a clean home was the foundation of a happy life. The familiar scent of her pot roast greeted me as I walked in, along with her voice calling from the kitchen. "Noah, is that you?" "It's me, Mom," I called back, hanging my jacket in the hall closet. She appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You're early. Evan and Mia won't be here for another half hour." "I know," I said, kissing her cheek. "I thought I'd help you finish dinner." She raised an eyebrow, suspicious already. "You never offer to help with dinner? What's going on?" "Nothing," I lied, following her into the kitchen. "I just thought it would be nice." My mother was many things, but gullible was not one of them. She gave me a long look before turning back to the stove. "Your father's in his study. Why don't you go say hello while I finish up here?" I found my father where she said he'd be, seated behind his desk with reading glasses perched on his nose, reviewing some document. He looked up when I knocked on the open door. "Noah," he said, a smile creasing his face. Come in, you're early." "Thought I'd beat traffic," I said, stepping into the room and handing him the whiskey. He examined the bottle appreciatively. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion," I said, settling into one of the leather chairs across from his desk. "Just felt like bringing something." Like my mother, he seemed skeptical, but he didn't press. Instead, he opened the bottle and poured 2 fingers into each of 2 tumblers he retrieved from a drawer. "Cheers," he said, handing me one. "Cheers," I echoed, taking a small sip. The whiskey burned pleasantly, warming me from the inside out. "So," he said, setting his glass down, "how's work?" It was his standard opening question, the one he'd been asking since I got my first job at 16. I'd always had a ready answer, fine, busy, challenging, but good. But today I hesitated. "Actually," I began, "that's something I wanted to talk to you and Mom about tonight." His expression turned serious. "Everything all right? You're not in any trouble, are you?" "No, nothing like that," I assured him quickly. "Just a change of plans." He nodded slowly, Well, we can discuss it over dinner. Your mother hates when we start serious conversations without her. I smiled, grateful for the reprieve. I remember. We finished our drinks in comfortable silence, my father returning to his document while I looked around the study. It had been his sanctuary for as long as I could remember, a place where he retreated to work or think or escape from the noise of family life. As a child, I'd found it intimidating, with its dark wood and serious books. As an adult, I found it comforting, unchanging, reliable, exactly what you expected it to be. The doorbell rang, signaling Evan and Mia's arrival. I heard my mother greeting them, the excited voices of my niece and nephew, the familiar chaos of family gathering. My father stood, adjusting his sweater. "Shall we?" he said, gesturing toward the door. Dinner was a lively affair, as it always was when Emma and Jack were present. They dominated the conversation with stories about school and friends and the new puppy that lived next door. I watched them, envying their enthusiasm, their unfiltered joy in the small details of their lives. It wasn't until dessert, apple pie, my father's favorite, that my mother turned to me with that same suspicious look from earlier. "So, Noah," she said, cutting through Emma's story about a playground mishap. "Your father mentioned you had something to discuss." All eyes turned to me. I felt my mouth go dry, despite the ice cream melting on my plate. Evan caught my eye across the table, giving me a subtle nod of encouragement. "Right," I said, setting down my fork. I've been thinking about making some changes." "What kind of changes?" my mother asked, her voice carefully neutral. I took a deep breath. "I've requested a sabbatical from work. 2 months, I'm going to travel." "Travel where?" my father asked, his tone equally measured. "Japan to start," I said. "Then maybe Korea, Thailand. I haven't figured out the whole itinerary yet." There was a moment of silence as my parents processed this. Emma broke it with an excited gasp. "Japan? Like where Pokemon is from?" I smiled at her. "Exactly like that." "When would this trip be happening?" my mother asked. "I leave on July 14th, I said, watching her face carefully. As expected, her expression fell. "But that's the day before your birthday." "I know," I said gently. "I'll actually be turning 32 somewhere over the Pacific Ocean." "You won't be here for your birthday dinner," she said, as if I might not have realized this implication. "No," I confirmed. "I won't." She exchanged a look with my father, a silent communication developed over decades of marriage. He cleared his throat. "This seems rather sudden, Noah. What brought this on?" I struggled to articulate the feeling that had been building in me for years, that had crystallized at Evan's birthday party. "I just need a change," I said finally. "I've been in the same place, doing the same things for a long time. I want to experience something different before." "Before what?" my mother prompted when I trailed off. "Before it's too late," I finished, immediately regretting the melodramatic phrasing. "You're 31, not 91, my father said with a short laugh. "I'd hardly say it's too late for anything." "I know," I said, backtracking. "That came out wrong. I just mean I've always talked about wanting to travel more, to see more of the world, and I've never done it. I want to stop talking about it and actually do it." My mother's expression softened slightly. "I understand wanting to travel, Noah, but 2 months is a long time, and to miss your birthday—" "We always celebrate together," she continued. "Always." "I know, Mom, and I'm sorry about that, but I need to do this." She pressed her lips together, clearly unhappy but trying to be supportive. "Well, we could have an early celebration before you go. It won't be the same, but—" "Actually," I interrupted, "I'd rather not. If that's okay." Her face fell further. You don't want a birthday celebration at all? Not this year, I said. I think I just need this birthday to be different. For myself. Another loaded glance between my parents. My father sighed. It's your decision, of course. But are you sure about all of this, Noah? Taking that much time off work, spending all that money? I'm sure, I said, with more confidence than I'd felt about anything in years. I've thought it through. I have the savings. I have the time off approved. It's all set. What about your apartment? My mother asked. I'll pay ahead, I said, repeating what I'd told Evan. It'll be fine. My father nodded slowly. Well, if you've made up your mind, then we support you. Right, Carol. My mother hesitated before nodding as well. Of course we do. We just want you to be happy, Noah. Thank you, I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. That means a lot. Can I go to Japan too? Jack piped up, having been uncharacteristically quiet during the adult conversation. Mia laughed. Not this time, buddy. Uncle Noah's going on a special trip just for him. But I want to see Pokémon. Maybe Uncle Noah can bring you back something Pokémon, Evan suggested, giving me a look that said you're definitely bringing them back something. Absolutely, I agreed. I'll find the coolest Pokémon stuff there is. This seemed to satisfy Jack, and the conversation gradually shifted to other topics. As we helped clear the table, my mother pulled me aside in the kitchen. Are you really okay, Noah? She asked quietly, her hand on my arm. You seem, I don't know, restless. I considered deflecting, giving her the same reassurances I'd been giving everyone, but something in her concerned expression made me opt for honesty. I don't know if I'm okay, I admitted. That's kind of the point of the trip, to figure that out. She studied my face, her own reflecting a mixture of worry and understanding. Well, she said finally, sometimes we need to go away to find our way back to ourselves. I blinked, surprised by her insight. Yeah, that's exactly it. She patted my cheek, a gesture that had comforted me since childhood. Just promise you'll call and send pictures. I will, I promised. Every day. She smiled, though her eyes remained concerned. Every other day would be fine. After dinner, as Evan and I helped my father with the dishes while my mother showed Mia her new garden, he brought up the trip again. This Japan thing, he said, handing me a wet plate to dry. It's not about running away from something, is it? I considered the question as I wiped the plate dry. Maybe, I admitted, but I think it's more about running toward something. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. Just make sure you know what that something is before you get there. The rest of the evening passed pleasantly enough, with no more interrogation about my trip. As we were leaving, Evan pulled me aside. You survived, he said with a grin. And they didn't even disown you. I laughed. A successful family dinner by any measure. So it's really happening, huh? You're really going. I'm really going, I confirmed. Tickets bought and everything. Good for you, he said, and I could tell he meant it. I think this could be exactly what you need. Thanks, I said, grateful for his support. For what it's worth, I think you were right the other day. I haven't been happy in a long time. I'm hoping this helps with that. He squeezed my shoulder. I hope so too. And hey, maybe Mia and I can come visit you somewhere along the way. Make it a family vacation. The thought of my brother and his family joining me for part of my journey warmed me. I'd like that. Let me get settled first, figure out where I'm going next, and we can talk about it. Deal, he said, pulling me into a quick hug. Stay safe, little brother. As I drove home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. The hard part was over. I'd made the decision, booked the ticket, told my family. Now all that was left was to prepare for the journey ahead. The next day at work, word of my sabbatical had spread. Colleagues stopped by my desk throughout the day, some expressing envy, others curiosity, a few poorly concealed judgment. 2 months in Asia, my cubicle neighbor, Rachel, said during our coffee break. That's bold. Is it? I asked. People take sabbaticals all the time. Sure, to write a book or learn a new skill, you're just, what, wandering around Japan? I bristled at her tone. I'm exploring a part of the world I've always wanted to see, learning about different cultures, experiencing new things. She shrugged. Hey, if you can afford it, more power to you. I just hope your job is still here when you get back. Her words echoed my own fears, but I pushed them aside. If it is, great. If not, I'll find something else. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. Wow, that's a very zen attitude for someone who triple checks every spreadsheet. I laughed, despite myself. Maybe I'm turning over a new leaf. Maybe, she agreed, though she didn't sound convinced. Well, good luck with it all. Bring me back something cool. As she walked away, I realized I'd have to get used to these reactions. To most people, what I was doing probably seemed impulsive, reckless, maybe even a little crazy. A month ago, I would have thought the same thing about someone else making this choice. But it didn't feel crazy to me anymore. It felt necessary, as vital as breathing. The days began to blur together as I prepared for my departure. I created a detailed packing list, researched places to stay in Tokyo, downloaded language apps to refresh my Japanese. I paid my rent 3 months in advance, just to be safe, and set up automatic payments for my few bills. I visited my parents' house for dinner twice more before my departure, each time assuring my increasingly anxious mother that yes, I had packed enough socks, and no, I wasn't going to get lost in a foreign country. The weekend before I left, Evan and Mia hosted a small farewell dinner at their house. Just family, they'd said, but when I arrived, I found a few of my closest friends there as well. Not a birthday party, Evan clarified when he saw my surprised expression. Just a bon voyage thing. Mom insisted. It was actually nice, low-key with good food and better company. No cake, no candles, no birthday wishes. Just people who cared about me, wishing me well on my journey. As the evening wound down, Emma approached me with a small, wrapped package. I got you something for your trip, she said, holding it out to me. Well, Mom helped. I unwrapped it carefully to find a small, leather-bound journal with my initials embossed on the cover. It's beautiful, I told her, genuinely touched. Mom said you should write down everything you see and do, Emma explained, so you don't forget. That's excellent advice, I said, pulling her into a hug. Thank you, I'll use it every day. Promise? Promise. The final days before my departure passed in a blur of last-minute preparations and goodbyes. I cleaned my apartment thoroughly, tucked most of my belongings into closets and drawers, and left emergency contact information with my landlord. The night before my flight, I sat in my nearly bare living room, my packed suitcase and backpack by the door. The reality of what I was about to do finally hit me full force. I was leaving everything familiar behind, flying halfway around the world with only a vague plan and a one-way ticket. For a moment, panic set in. What if this was a terrible mistake? What if I couldn't handle being alone in a foreign country? What if I ran out of money? What if, when I came back, I couldn't find a job? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to remember why I was doing this. Not just because I was bored or restless, but because I'd spent years living a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. I'd followed all the expected paths, made all the safe choices, and ended up feeling like a stranger in my own existence. This trip wasn't just about seeing new places, it was about finding myself again. Or maybe discovering who I could be if I stopped living on autopilot. With that thought, I opened Emma's journal and wrote my first entry. July 13th, one day before departure. Tomorrow I leave for Tokyo. I'm terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. I don't know what I'll find there, or who I'll be when I return. But I know I need to go. For years I've felt like I've been holding my breath, waiting for my real life to begin. It's time to exhale. It's time to live. I closed the journal, set my alarm, and went to bed for my last night in Chicago. The flight to Tokyo was 14 hours of anticipation, anxiety, and uncomfortable sleep. I watched the map on the seatback screen as we crossed the Pacific, tracking our progress toward a life I couldn't yet imagine. We landed at Narita International Airport on the afternoon of July 15th, my birthday, though it felt strange to think about it that way. Due to crossing the international date line, I'd essentially skipped the actual moment of turning 32, leaping forward in time as we flew west. The customs officer stamped my passport with barely a glance, and just like that, I was in Japan. The air felt different somehow, heavier, more humid than Chicago, with unfamiliar scents I couldn't identify. I followed the signs to the train station, grateful for both the English translations and my rudimentary Japanese. The Narita Express would take me directly to Shinjuku Station, near the hotel I'd booked for my first week. As the train pulled away from the airport, reality began to sink in. I was here. I had actually done it. Left everything behind, traveled halfway around the world, and now sat on a train heading into Tokyo, a city of 37 million people, where I knew absolutely no one. The panic I'd felt the night before threatened to return, but I pushed it down, focusing instead on the scenery rushing past the window. Rice fields gave way to suburbs, suburbs to urban sprawl, until we were surrounded by the dense cityscape of Tokyo itself. Shinjuku Station was overwhelming, a maze of platforms and exits filled with more people than I'd ever seen in one place. I clutched my suitcase and followed the flow of the crowd, trying to look like I knew where I was going while discreetly checking the map on my phone. My hotel was a 15-minute walk from the station, but it took me nearly 40 minutes to find it, navigating narrow streets and alleyways that looked nothing like the wide boulevards of Chicago. By the time I checked in, I was exhausted, jet-lagged, and questioning every life choice that had led me to this moment. The room was tiny but immaculate, barely enough space for a single bed, a desk, and my suitcase. The bathroom was a marvel of efficiency, with a combination toilet and sink that recycled hand-washing water for the next flush. It would have been claustrophobic if it weren't so cleverly designed. I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by the silence. No traffic sounds from the street below, no neighbors moving around upstairs. The room was soundproofed to an almost eerie degree. "Happy birthday to me," I said aloud, just to hear a human voice. My phone buzzed with incoming messages, family and friends who'd realized what day it was. I opened my mother's first. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. I hope your flight was good and you're settling in safely. Call when you can. Love you." Then, Evan. "Happy 32nd, little brother. Hope Japan is treating you well so far. Send pics when you're not too busy being a world traveler." And others, childhood friends, college roommates, co-workers, all wishing me a happy birthday, all curious about my adventure. I sent quick responses, assuring everyone I'd arrived safely and would call soon. But I didn't take any pictures, didn't try to explain what I was feeling. How could I when I wasn't sure myself? Instead, I took a long shower, changed into fresh clothes, and decided to venture out. Birthday or not, I needed food, and I refused to spend my first night in Tokyo hiding in my hotel room. The streets of Shinjuku were a sensory overload. Neon signs in kanji and hiragana, crowded sidewalks, the smell of grilling meat, and seafood from tiny restaurants tucked between towering office buildings. I wandered without direction, letting the flow of pedestrians guide me, until hunger finally forced me to make a decision. I chose a small ramen shop, its window displaying plastic replicas of the dishes they served. Inside, it was crowded with locals, always a good sign. I was seated at the counter, given an English menu, and left to make my selection. The chef noticed my hesitation and asked in heavily accented English, "First time Japan?" I nodded. "First day, actually." He smiled broadly. "Then you must try tonkotsu ramen. Best for beginners." "I'll trust your recommendation," I said, grateful for the guidance. The ramen, when it arrived, was nothing like the instant packets I'd eaten in college. Rich pork broth, tender slices of chashu, perfectly cooked noodles. It was the most comforting thing I could have asked for on this strange, disorienting birthday. As I ate, I watched the other customers, businessmen in suits unwinding after work, young couples sharing bowls of gyoza, solo diners like myself focused intently on their food. No one paid me any attention, which was both lonely and liberating. I paid my bill and continued walking, now with no destination at all in mind. The night air had cooled slightly, making the humidity more bearable. I found myself in an area filled with small bars and izakayas, their red lanterns glowing in the growing darkness. On impulse, I ducked into one that looked relatively uncrowded. The interior was cozy, wood paneling, low lighting, jazz playing softly in the background. I took a seat at the bar and ordered a whiskey, neat. "American?" the bartender asked as he set the drink in front of me. "That obvious, huh?" He smiled. "Only a little? Vacation?" I considered the question. More like a sabbatical. "Ah," he nodded, as if this explained everything. "First time in Tokyo?" "First time in Japan. I just arrived today." "Today?" He looked impressed. "And already finding the good bars. You have good instincts." I laughed. "Or good luck." "Sometimes same thing," he said with a shrug, before moving to serve another customer. I sipped my whiskey slowly, savoring the warm burn. It was a good brand, better than I usually allowed myself at home. But I'm not at home, I reminded myself. Normal rules don't apply here. As if to confirm this thought, the bartender returned with a second glass, this one filled with amber liquid I didn't recognize. "I didn't order this," I said, confused. "On the house," he replied. "Japanese whiskey. You should compare." I thanked him and tried the new drink. It was smoother than my first whiskey, with a complex flavor that reminded me of honey and oak. "It's excellent," I told the bartender when he returned. "Thank you." He nodded, pleased. "Special occasion?" I hesitated, then decided there was no reason to hide it. "It's my birthday, actually." His eyebrows shot up. "Birthday? Why you not say? Wait here." Before I could protest, he disappeared into the back room. I finished my whiskey, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. The bartender returned moments later with a small plate holding a single perfect strawberry on top of a tiny shortcake, with a candle stuck in the center. "We have no proper cake," he apologized, "but cannot have birthday with no candle." I stared at the impromptu dessert, unexpectedly moved by the gesture. "This is perfect. Thank you." He lit the candle with a flourish. "Make wish," he instructed seriously. I closed my eyes, thought for a moment, then silently wished for courage. Courage to embrace this journey fully, to let it change me however it needed to. Then I opened my eyes and blew out the candle. The bartender applauded, as did a few nearby patrons who had noticed the small ceremony. "Happy birthday," he said, pouring me another finger of the Japanese whiskey. "This one also on house." I thanked him again, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the alcohol. This wasn't the birthday I'd expected. No family dinner, no carefully wrapped gifts, no familiar traditions. But somehow, this tiny celebration with strangers felt right. A fitting start to this new chapter. I ate the strawberry shortcake slowly, making it last. When I finally paid my bill, the bartender refused payment for the 2 extra whiskeys. I left a tip that made his eyes widen, despite knowing that tipping wasn't customary in Japan. "Special occasion?" I said with a smile, echoing his words from earlier. Back in my hotel room, I took out Emma's journal again and made my second entry. July 15th, birthday in Tokyo. I turned 32 today, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. My first day in Japan has been overwhelming, exhausting, and surprisingly wonderful. I had ramen for dinner and whiskey with a birthday candle in a tiny bar where no one knew me until I told them. It wasn't the birthday I expected, but maybe it was the birthday I needed. I still don't know if this journey will give me what I'm looking for, but for the first time in years, I'm excited to find out what happens next. The next week passed in a blur of new experiences. I visited the major tourist sites, the Tokyo Tower, the Imperial Palace Gardens, the ancient Sensoji Temple in Asakusa. I got lost in the labyrinthine department stores of Ginza, marveled at the teenager fashion spectacle of Harajuku, and found unexpected peace in the forested grounds of the Meiji Shrine. Each night, I returned to my tiny hotel room exhausted but exhilarated, filling Emma's journal with observations and reflections. I sent daily photos to my family's group chat, assuring my mother that yes, I was eating well, and no, I wasn't lonely. That last part wasn't entirely true. Despite the constant stimulation of being in a new place, despite the brief, friendly interactions with shopkeepers and servers and fellow tourists, I was acutely aware of my solitude. I had no one to turn to when I saw something amazing, no one to laugh with when I made cultural missteps, no one to share the weight of so many new impressions. But there was freedom in the solitude, too. I could change plans on a whim, linger in places that captured my interest, move on quickly from those that didn't. I answered to no one but myself, and gradually I began to remember what it felt like to make choices based solely on my own desires. On my 8th day in Tokyo, I checked out of my hotel and moved to a traditional ryokan in the Yanaka district, an older part of the city that had somehow retained its pre-war character. The ryokan was a family-run establishment, with tatami mat floors, sliding paper doors, and a small garden visible from my room. The elderly proprietress, Tanaka-san, spoke limited English but made up for it with enthusiastic gestures and a translation app on her phone. She showed me how to wear the yukata robe provided for guests, how to use the communal bath on the ground floor, and most importantly, where to find the best neighborhood restaurants. "You stay how long?" she asked as she served tea in my room after I'd settled in. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "Maybe another week in Tokyo, then I thought I'd go to Kyoto." She nodded approvingly. "Kyoto very beautiful. But first you see real Tokyo, not just big buildings and shops. I tell you where to go." And she did, marking up a local map with circles and stars, adding notes in a mix of Japanese and English. Under her guidance, I discovered parts of the city I would never have found on my own. A tiny shrine tucked between apartment buildings, a neighborhood sento, public bath, where old men soaked and gossiped, a hidden garden where turtles sunned themselves on rocks. In the evenings, I often sat in the ryokan's small common area, drinking tea and attempting conversation with the other guests, a retired couple from Australia, a solo female traveler from Germany, a family of 4 from Taiwan. We communicated in broken English and exaggerated gestures, sharing travel tips and stories from home. It was during one of these evening gatherings that I met Kenji, Tanaka-san's nephew. He was in his late 30s, spoke excellent English thanks to years working for an international company, and had recently returned to Tokyo after living abroad. "My aunt says you're traveling alone," he said, sitting beside me with a cup of green tea. "That's brave." I shrugged. "Or foolish. I'm still deciding which." He laughed. "Perhaps both. The best adventures usually are." We fell into easy conversation. Kenji had lived in London and Singapore before returning to Japan to help with his family's business, a small but successful tea importing company. "I missed home," he explained, "and my parents are getting older. It was time to come back." "Do you regret it?" I asked. "Coming back after seeing so much of the world?" He considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," he admitted. "London has energy Tokyo can't match, but there's comfort in the familiar too, and purpose in continuing what my family has built." His words resonated with me, though my situation was different. I'd left seeking the unfamiliar, fleeing the comfort that had begun to feel like a trap. "What about you?" Kenji asked. "What brought you to Japan alone?" I hesitated, unsure how to explain my impromptu sabbatical without sounding like I was having a midlife crisis a decade early. "I needed a change," I said finally. "I felt like I was living someone else's life." He nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "And have you found your own life here?" "I don't know yet," I said honestly, "but I'm looking." Kenji became an unexpected friend over the next few days. When he wasn't working, he offered to show me parts of Tokyo that even Tanaka-san hadn't marked on her map. A jazz club in a basement in Koenji, a rooftop garden on top of a department store in Ikebukuro, a tiny restaurant specializing in omuris that had been in the same family for 3 generations. "Why are you being so nice to me?" I asked him one evening as we sat in a neighborhood izakaya, sharing plates of grilled skewers and cold beer. "You barely know me." He looked surprised by the question. "Do I need a reason? You're a visitor in my country. You're interested in more than just the tourist sites, and," he added with a smile, "my aunt would be very displeased if I didn't show proper hospitality to her favorite guest." "I'm her favorite?" "She says you eat her breakfast with proper appreciation. The Australians complain about the fish." I laughed. "Well, please thank her for me. For everything. I've learned more about Tokyo in the past week than I did from any guidebook." "I will tell her," Kenji promised, "but you could stay longer and tell her yourself." The invitation was casual, but I felt a weight behind it. It would be easy to stay here, in this neighborhood that was beginning to feel comfortable, with people who had welcomed me so warmly. But that wasn't why I'd come. "I think I need to move on," I said. "See more of Japan before my time runs out." Kenji nodded, understanding. "Where will you go next?" "Kyoto, I think, and then I'm not sure." "You're open to suggestions." "Always." He pulled out his phone and showed me pictures of a coastal town I didn't recognize. Traditional wooden houses, a harbor filled with fishing boats, mountains rising steeply in the background. "Onomichi," he said. "On the inland sea. My grandmother lives there. It's small, but beautiful. Very different from Tokyo or Kyoto. More real Japan, I guess you could say." The images were captivating. "It looks incredible." "I could call my grandmother," Kenji offered. "She rents rooms in her house sometimes. Much better than a hotel." I hesitated. "I wouldn't want to impose." "She would be delighted," he assured me. "She loves having visitors, especially foreigners. She'll feed you too much and tell you too many stories, but you'll see a side of Japan most tourists never do." The offer was tempting, a chance to experience Japanese life beyond the carefully curated tourist experience. "If you're sure she wouldn't mind." I'll call her tonight, Kenji said, his decision made. You'll go to Kyoto first, then Onomichi. How long do you have left in Japan? About 5 more weeks, give or take. He nodded. Plenty of time. 2 weeks in Kyoto, 1 in Onomichi. Then maybe Hiroshima, Fukuoka. He trailed off, plotting an itinerary in his head. I smiled, touched by his enthusiasm for my journey. I'll see where the road takes me. The next day, I said goodbye to Tanaka-san and the other guests at the ryokan. The elderly proprietress pressed a small package into my hands before I left, a tin of her favorite tea and a hand-drawn card with her address. You write, she instructed firmly. Tell me about journey. Come back someday. I will, I promised, meaning it. Thank you for everything. Kenji had arranged for his grandmother to host me the following week, giving me plenty of time to explore Kyoto first. As I boarded the Shinkansen bullet train, watching Tokyo recede into the distance, I felt a mix of excitement and melancholy. I'd found an unexpected sense of belonging in that bustling metropolis, among people who'd been strangers just 2 weeks ago. But the journey was far from over. Kyoto awaited. And beyond that, places I hadn't even imagined yet. In my journal that night, from a traditional inn near Kyoto's famous Kiyomizu-dera Temple, I wrote, July 24th, leaving Tokyo. I've been in Japan less than 2 weeks, and already I feel changed. Not dramatically, I haven't had some grand epiphany about the meaning of life or anything, but I'm starting to remember what it feels like to be curious again, to be open to new experiences without analyzing them to death first. The strangest part is how quickly I found a community in Tokyo. Tanaka-san, Kenji, even the regulars at the local coffee shop who nodded hello each morning. They became a kind of anchor in a place where everything else was foreign. Leaving felt harder than I expected. But that's part of the journey too, isn't it? Learning to connect, and then learning to let go. Moving forward even when staying would be easier. Tomorrow, I'll explore Kyoto. Kenji says it's like stepping back in time. I hope he's right. After years of feeling stuck in place, I'm ready to move through time and space in ways I never allowed myself before. My last thought before falling asleep was that Evan had been right. I hadn't been happy for a long time, but for the first time in years, I felt like happiness might be possible again, not as a distant goal, but as something I could touch, something I could feel taking root inside me with each new day in this unfamiliar world. The remainder of my time in Japan passed in a kaleidoscope of experiences. The serene temples and bustling markets of Kyoto, the narrow streets and harbor views of Onomichi, where Kenji's grandmother fed me home-cooked meals and taught me to fold origami cranes, the sobering peace of Hiroshima's Memorial Park, the lively food stalls of Fukuoka. Each place left its mark on me, each connection with locals and fellow travelers adding another thread to the tapestry of my journey. I filled Emma's journal and had to buy a second one, documenting not just what I saw but how it made me feel, the ways in which I was slowly changing. Before I knew it, my final week in Japan had arrived. I'd returned to Tokyo, staying once again at Tanaka-san's ryokan, welcomed back like a long-lost relative. Kenji took time off work to show me places I'd missed on my first visit and to help me find perfect souvenirs for my family. Pokemon toys for Jack, a silk scarf for Mia, traditional Japanese pottery for my parents, and a beautiful wooden puzzle box for Emma. On my last night, Tanaka-san and Kenji organized a small farewell dinner at the ryokan, inviting the current guests and a few locals who'd become familiar faces during my stay. We sat around a low table in the common room, sharing plates of sushi and tempura, drinking sake and telling stories well into the night. You'll come back, Tanaka-san declared confidently, patting my hand. Japan not finished with you yet. I smiled, touched by her certainty. I hope so. Will you go home now? asked the German woman who'd arrived at the Ryokan just after me and had also extended her stay. Back to Chicago? Not directly, I said. I'm going to South Korea next, then Thailand. I have about 3 more weeks before I need to head back. And then? Kenji asked quietly, when the conversation had moved on to other topics. I sighed. And then reality, I guess. Finding a job, figuring out where to live. You don't sound excited about that part. I'm not, I admitted, but I can't travel forever. Why not? He challenged. Many people do. I laughed. I don't have the savings for that, or the skills to work remotely. Skills can be learned, he pointed out, if it's what you truly want. I considered his words, wondering if it really could be that simple. Could I reshape my entire life based on 2 months of travel? Or would I inevitably slide back into old patterns once I returned to familiar surroundings? I don't know what I want anymore, I confessed. This trip has shown me what I don't want, but I'm still figuring out the rest. Kenji nodded, understanding. Sometimes that's enough to start with. Knowing what feels wrong can guide you toward what feels right. The party wound down as midnight approached. I thanked everyone for their kindness, promised to stay in touch, and retreated to my room to finish packing for my early flight to Seoul the next day. As I carefully folded my clothes, I realized how few material possessions I'd missed during my time away. My apartment in Chicago was full of things I'd accumulated over the years. Books I'd read once, kitchen gadgets I rarely used, furniture I'd bought because it seemed like what I was supposed to own at my age. None of it had crossed my mind in weeks. What I had missed were people, my family, despite our differences. A few close friends who'd stayed in touch throughout my journey. But even that absence had taught me something valuable. That I could build connections anywhere. That loneliness was a state of mind as much as a circumstance. My flight to Seoul the next morning was bittersweet. Tanaka-san hugged me goodbye with tears in her eyes, extracting another promise that I would write. Kenji accompanied me to the airport, helping with my now heavier luggage and making sure I found the right check-in counter. You've been an incredible friend, I told him as we stood at the security checkpoint, the furthest he could go. I can't thank you enough for everything. No thanks needed, he said, shaking his head. You brought something interesting into our lives too, you know. New perspectives, fresh eyes on things we take for granted. I hadn't thought of it that way, that I might have given something back to the people who'd welcomed me so warmly. The idea was comforting. Will you let me know when you're back in Chicago? Kenji asked. How you're doing, what you decide to do next? Of course, I promised. And if you ever visit the U.S.? You'll be my first call, he assured me with a smile. Safe travels, Noah, wherever you go. We hugged briefly, and then I was through security, looking back to wave one last time before he disappeared into the crowd. South Korea was a revelation. Similar to Japan in some ways, strikingly different in others. I spent 10 days there, visiting Seoul's palaces and markets, taking a tour to the DMZ, and spending a peaceful weekend in the coastal city of Busan. Thailand followed, a complete contrast to the ordered societies of Japan and Korea. In Bangkok, I navigated chaotic streets and serene temples, sampled street food that set my mouth on fire, and marveled at the juxtaposition of ancient traditions and modern excess. For my final week, I retreated to a small bungalow on the island of Koh Lanta, spending my days swimming in crystal-clear water and my evenings writing in my journal on a deck overlooking the Andaman Sea. It was here, thousands of miles from home, that I finally began to piece together what the next chapter of my life might look like. On my last night in Thailand, I called Evan from my beachfront bungalow. Despite the 13-hour time difference, he answered immediately. Noah, how's paradise? Pretty paradisal, I said, smiling at the sound of his voice. How are things there? Same old, same old. The kids miss their uncle. Mom asks about you constantly. Dad pretends he's not worried, but calls me every other day to see if I've heard from you. I talk to Mom almost daily, I protested. I've sent about 1,000 photos. I know, but it's not the same as having you here. He paused. So, you're coming home soon, right? In a few days? Yeah, my flight lands Tuesday afternoon. Want me to pick you up from the airport? I hesitated. Actually, could you? That would be great. Of course, just text me your flight details. Another pause. Have you figured out the job situation yet? Mom mentioned you were looking into some options. This was the conversation I'd been avoiding with my family. I took a deep breath. That's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. Uh-oh, that sounds ominous. It's not bad, I assured him quickly. Just different. I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do next, and I don't think I can go back to the way things were before. Meaning? Meaning I don't want to jump back into the same kind of corporate job. I don't want to live in the same apartment, in the same city, doing the same things I've always done. Okay, Evan said slowly. So what do you want? I want to keep traveling, I said, the words coming easier now that I'd started. Not constantly, but regularly. I've been looking into teaching English abroad. With my business background and a TEFL certification, I could teach business English in a lot of places. Silence on the other end. Then, teaching English in another country. Yeah, probably South Korea, at least to start. The programs there are well established, the pay is good, and I already know I like the culture. Wow, Evan said finally. That's a big change, Noah. I know. Have you thought this through? What about your career progression, your retirement savings, your— Yes, I've thought about all of that, I interrupted. I know it's not the most practical choice, but these past 2 months have shown me that I can live with a lot less than I thought I needed. That maybe security isn't worth sacrificing happiness for. Another long pause. And this will make you happy? Teaching English in Korea? I think so, I said honestly. Or at least it feels like a step in the right direction. Something new, something meaningful, something that's my choice, not just the path of least resistance. I heard Evan sigh, but it wasn't an unhappy sound, more like resignation mixed with understanding. Well, if anyone has earned the right to start fresh, it's you. You've always played it safe, followed the rules. Until now, I pointed out. Until now, he agreed. So what's the plan? You come home, sell your stuff, apply for teaching jobs, and head back out? Something like that. I need to get the TEFL certification first, which will take a few months. Then apply for positions starting next spring. And in the meantime, I'll pick up some freelance work, maybe do some tutoring to see if I actually like teaching. I've saved enough to get by for a while. Where will you live? Not back in your old apartment, I'm guessing? I laughed. No, definitely not. I was thinking I might see if Mom and Dad would let me stay with them for a few months, just until I get things sorted out. They'd love that, Evan said immediately. Especially Mom. She's been saying the house feels too empty now that both of us are gone. Good, because I already gave notice on my apartment. The lease is up at the end of the month. Bold move, Evan remarked. What if Mom and Dad had said no? Then I would have crashed on your couch, I teased. Don't pretend you wouldn't have let me. True, but Mia might have had something to say about it. He chuckled. So that's the plan, huh? Come home, but only to prepare to leave again. Put that way, it sounded like I was running away rather than moving toward something new. It's not that I don't want to be near family, I clarified, but I need to try something different. See if there's a life out there that fits me better than the one I had. I get it, Evan said softly. I really do. And for what it's worth, I think it's brave. Terrifying, but brave. Thanks, I said, relieved by his support. That means a lot. Have you told Mom and Dad yet? Not the details. I wanted to talk to you first. Well, prepare yourself. Mom's going to freak out initially, but she'll come around. Dad will pretend to be practical and concerned about your future, but secretly he'll be proud of you for taking a risk. I smiled, recognizing the accuracy of his predictions. And what about you? Really? Me? Evan paused. I'm proud of you too, and maybe a little jealous. Jealous? You? Don't sound so surprised. You're about to have this big adventure, reinvent yourself completely. Meanwhile, I'm still in the same job I've had for a decade, living in the same house, driving the same car. Yeah, but you love your life, I pointed out. You have Mia and the kids, your work is meaningful to you. You're happy. I am, he agreed. But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to just throw everything up in the air and see where it lands. Not that I would actually do it, but the fantasy is nice. Well, you can live vicariously through me, I offered. I'll send lots of pictures and stories from my new Korean life. You'd better, and visit frequently. The kids need their uncle. I will, I promised. Korea's not that far. We talked a while longer, about practical matters and family news, before saying goodbye. As I hung up, I felt lighter, more certain of my decision. If Evan understood, maybe my parents would too, and if they didn't right away, they'd come around eventually. I spent my final day in Thailand on the beach, swimming and reading and writing one last entry in my travel journal. September 10th, last day in Thailand. Tomorrow I head back to Chicago, but not to my old life. These 2 months have changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I've learned that I'm braver than I thought, more resilient, more open to connection. I've learned that home isn't necessarily a place, but a feeling of belonging that can be found anywhere if you're open to it. I don't know if teaching in Korea will be my long-term path, but it feels right for now. And maybe that's enough, to follow what feels right in this moment, and trust that it will lead to the next right thing and the next. When I boarded that plane in July, I was running away from a life that no longer fit. Now I'm running towards something new, something of my own choosing. The difference feels important. I made a birthday wish for courage 2 months ago. I think perhaps it's finally coming true.